bypass the literal middleman.
Yeah, the middleman. Why?
You don't need the middleman at all.
Right. Okay.
You don't feed humans, have them generate energy, and then have that energy generate the machine.
Okay.
Hey, this is Ryan of Happy Healthy Vegan, and a big shout out to one of our viewers on TikTok who wrote and said, hey, Ryan really needs to check out this podcast from Neil deGrasse Tyson's podcast where he interviews Lawrence Fishburne, you know, the actor that portrayed Morpheus in The Matrix. So in this podcast, the two of them get into this discussion about the secret at the end of The Matrix. Spoiler alert if you've never seen The Matrix, but you know, then forgive me if I get this kind of wrong. I'm not a big Matrix nerd or anything like that, and that's not the point of this video, but you know, how humans are being kept as some kind of energy source, a battery, if you will, for whoever's keeping them, their masters or whatever. So the reason why I'm making this video is not to talk about the Matrix. It's because, as we'll see, Neil deGrasse Tyson takes issue with this whole concept of keeping humans as some kind of battery energy source for being extremely inefficient. It would never be done, and there's a way more efficient way for these masters or overlords to get the energy rather than draining it from human bodies or brains. Let's jump right in.
Anytime you convert energy from one form to another, you don't get 100% of it.
You don't get 100%.
No, you get like, at best, 90%. Your car.
So if you're still wondering, what does this have to do with vegan diets, or what if everyone in the world converted to a vegan diet? I promise I'll get to that in one moment. But the big takeaway point here I want you to remember is that Neil's correct here. When you convert energy from one form to another, it's never 100%. You know, you're going to lose some percentage. In his case, he said maybe 90% is the best you can get to. He's about to get to cars, how inefficient cars are at converting petroleum into energy that makes your car go. We'll get to the cars in a second, but let's continue.
Here are the machines using humans as a form of energy.
Okay, I get it now. It's not really masters or overlords that are using humans. It's machines that are using humans as a form of energy in the Matrix.
I can tell you how much energy we radiate, okay? We, depending on how big you are, all right, if you're exercising or not in that moment, typically between 80 and 100 watts.
Okay.
Wow, I was not aware of that fact, that my body's constantly putting out the power of a Marshall stack.
Where do we get 100 watts from? They're feeding us.
They're feeding us.
They're feeding us.
Right.
Whatever they're feeding us, feed themselves with that.
Oh, wow.
Bypass the literal middleman.
Yeah, the middleman. Why?
You don't need the middleman at all.
Right. Okay.
You don't feed humans, have them generate energy, and then have that energy generate the machine.
Okay.
Well, what are you doing?
Okay.
They didn't study physics.
And likewise, Neil deGrasse Tyson apparently never studied basic environmental science, because whether he's aware of it or not, he came very close to making an argument as to why everyone in the world should switch to a vegan diet. Really, I truly mean this. I'm not exaggerating in the slightest bit here. It all comes down to that inefficiency thing that we were talking about a few minutes ago, where Neil said, yeah, when you convert energy from one form into another, it's never 100%. You know, it's going to be a very inefficient process. And as we'll see here, not eating the middleman, just eating the food directly. I'm talking about not consuming animal products, just eat the plants that the animals are eating, because as we'll see, if Neil is upset about the extreme inefficiency of converting humans into energy for the Matrix computers, it's equally as inefficient to raise animals, all the energy you put into that, to lose most of it in the form of what humans actually eat. Let me show you the actual data. And as always, so haters can't validly claim that I'm cherry picking my data from vegan activist websites, I'm using data from Our World and Data. So first of all, let's talk about the inefficiency of land use, and we'll get to some more interesting things later about energy conversion, like, you know, what's going on in the Matrix. But it says the land use of livestock is so large because it takes 50 to 100 times as much land to produce a kilocalorie of beef or lamb versus plant-based alternatives. And for protein, it's still the same thing, about 50 to 100 times as much land to produce a gram of protein from beef or lamb versus peas or tofu. I mean, this is crazy. 50 to 100 times as much land to produce meat foods as opposed to plant foods that we can all eat. I mean, that alone is the reason why everyone should start eating a vegan or plant-based diet. And here's the entire chart. And as you can see, some types of animal products are more or less efficient as far as land use than others, but still, none can compare to the stuff on the bottom, which happens to be plants. And the article points out, yeah, foods fed to animals are not wasted. They are converted to meat and dairy and consumed by humans in the end. But the big point is, in terms of calorie and total protein, this process is very inefficient. Are you listening, Neil? But that's just land use inefficiency. It gets even way worse when we're talking about the energy inefficiency of converting energy from one form to another. Remember how I was talking about cars?
I forgot the numbers. The efficiency's grown over the years. Car might get 30% of the energy of the gas to have you move forward.
Got it.
Yeah, I checked. He's more or less right there. 30% seems to be on the high end. The range here is from like 14% to about 30%. So 14 to 30% efficiency, meaning you lose about 70 to 86% of the energy when you convert from petroleum into car momentum. So let's see how eating meat and other animal products compares with this inefficiency of cars. And this chart completely exposes the inefficiency of meat and dairy production in terms of calories. Here, efficiency is defined as this. An efficiency of 25% would mean that 25% of the calories in animal feed inputs were effectively converted to animal product, and the remaining 75% would be lost during the conversion. So the most efficient animal products, as we see here, are whole milk and eggs, 19%, 24%, roughly like how cars are. But when you look at poultry, 13%, worse than cars. And we get down to beef, a crappy 1.9%, meaning it's 98% loss. So remember, that chart we just saw was efficiency, or I should say inefficiency in terms of calories, energy. Now this next chart is for protein inefficiency, and it's equally horrendous. And as you see here, it's still crap. 3.8% efficiency for beef, 8.5% for pork.
Bypass the literal middleman.
Yeah, the middleman. Why?
You don't need the middleman at all.
Right.
Yes, Neil, according to your own logic, your own reasoning here, leave the middleman alone. There's absolutely no need to exploit animals in order to have such an inefficient conversion of energy when you can just eat the plants on their own. And the study goes into more detail, as the title of my video suggests here. What would it be like on this planet if everyone ate a vegan diet? And as we'll see, if people like Neil would shift towards a more plant-based diet, we don't only need less agricultural land overall, we also need less cropland, and by a shit ton, and let me show you. So this chart is titled Global Land Use for Agriculture Across Different Diets. The source for this data is down on the bottom of the chart. I'm not making this up. The top bar shows our current global diet, which shows about 80% of all agricultural land is devoted to feed animals. First, let me show you what would happen if people globally cut out beef and lamb. That's what the second to top bar shows. And as you can see, it's quite a reduction in land use, going from 4.13 billion hectares to 2.21 billion hectares. And the bottom bar shows what would happen if everyone in the world adopted a vegan diet. The researchers estimate that our total agricultural land use would shrink from 4.1 billion hectares to 1 billion, a reduction of 75%. That's equal to an area of the size of North America and Brazil combined. I mean, that's crazy. Can you imagine if somehow magically all of a sudden popped up out of the earth a landmass that's large as North America and Brazil combined? Well, that's what would happen if we stopped eating animal products. And to show that the data I'm providing here isn't some weird radicalized source, let's look at a safe, boring publication like The Economist. And as you see from the headline here, saying pretty much the same thing, a 75% reduction in agricultural land if we were to not have animal products around anymore. So to recap, not only is land use extremely inefficient, the energy conversion from the energy inputs required to produce animal products to have humans eat them later is extremely inefficient. In the case of beef, like 2 to 4%. I mean, are you listening, Neil? Do you care about energy efficiency at all? So if you've ever wondered, like I have wondered, what would happen to this planet if everyone adopted a vegan diet? Well, now we know one thing for sure, that there'd be way more land, the size of North America and Brazil combined. So that's awesome. I mean, animals aren't going to be bred into exploitation, to be slaughtered. We don't have to feed them all these incredible amounts of food to have it inefficiently converted so humans can have these burgers. It's just a win-win for the planet, for the animals. It seems like such a no-brainer to me. It just boggles my mind, like why people like Neil, with their science education and their large platforms, are just completely resistant to doing something that's right, not only ethically and morally, but right from a scientific point of view. However, if you disagree with everything I've said here, if you find fault with my arguments, find fault with the data, or you just happen to believe every piece of crap nonsense that comes out of Neil deGrasse's mouth, and some things he says are fine, we just talk about basic science and physics, he's fine, but when he gets into vegan stuff, philosophy, and this aspect of environmental science, is completely off the mark. But if you think somehow he's right, please come and share your best evidence with me on my Friday live stream, 6 p.m. Pacific time. Be civil, and we can maybe have a conversation. So I'll see you guys then on Friday. Remember, doesn't suck being vegan.